They thought the stroke had stolen my hearing along with my balance. I stood in the hallway outside my own bedroom, one hand gripping my cane, and listened to my son Michael tell his wife exactly how much my death would be worth. $3.8 million, he said. The farm alone is worth 2.5. The investments, the savings accounts, the life insurance. Dad's been sitting on a fortune and rotting away in this house like it's some kind of shrine to Mom. Jennifer's voice was quieter, but I heard every word. The stroke had damaged my left leg and slurred my speech slightly, but my ears worked just fine. We can't just wait for him to die, Michael. He could live another 10 years. We have the business opportunity now. Marcus needs an answer by Friday. I know. That's why we're doing the memory care paperwork tomorrow. Once we have him declared mentally incompetent, the power of attorney kicks in. The farm goes on the market. We sell it. Tell Dad the money's going toward his care. By the time anyone questions anything, it'll be done. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The cane trembled in my grip, but I kept silent. 43 years I'd worked this land. 43 years since I'd brought my wife Sarah here as a bride. She died in the bedroom where my son and his wife were plotting my institutional imprisonment. And Michael had grown up running through these fields, learning to drive the tractor when his feet barely reached the pedals. What if he fights it? Jennifer asked. Michael laughed. It was a sound I'd heard 1,000 times when he was growing up, usually when he'd figured out how to get away with something. Dad can barely walk without that cane. He slurs his words. Half the time it takes him 3 tries to remember what day it is. Dr. Martinez already noted cognitive decline in his chart after the stroke. We'll have him in Meadowbrook by next week, and the farm on the market by the end of the month. I turned carefully, my left leg dragging slightly as I made my way back down the hall. Each step was deliberate, quiet. The old floorboards knew how to creak, and I knew which ones to avoid. 50 years in this house taught you things. My office was at the back of the house, what used to be Sarah's sewing room before she got sick. I'd moved my desk in here 7 years ago, after she passed. Couldn't bear to use the office we'd shared. In here, I had my computer, my filing cabinets, and 3 months ago, I'd had something else installed. I sat down heavily in my chair and opened the laptop. My hands shook, but not from the stroke this time. I clicked open the application and watched the screen divide into 4 quadrants. 4 camera feeds. Living room, kitchen, my bedroom, the front hallway. I'd installed them the week after I'd overheard Michael on the phone with someone, talking about the old man's property and waiting for nature to take its course. I'd told him I was getting a medical alert system. He'd barely looked at the technician I'd hired. Didn't notice that the medical alert buttons in each room were actually security cameras with audio. The bedroom feed showed Michael and Jennifer still talking. I clicked the recording icon and saved the conversation to my secure cloud storage. 3 months of recordings. 3 months of evidence. My son thought I couldn't remember what day it was. The truth was simpler and sadder. Last Tuesday, when he'd asked me what day it was, I'd told him it was Friday. It wasn't confusion. It was a test. I'd wanted to see if he'd correct me with concern, or file it away as proof of my decline. He'd smiled and said, "That's right, Dad. Friday. It was Tuesday." After that, I'd started documenting everything. Every conversation. Every doctor's appointment. Every time Michael showed up with papers for me to sign, and I pretended my hands were too shaky to hold the pen. I opened my email and started typing. Robert Chen had been my attorney for 22 years. We'd served on the county planning board together back in the 90s. His grandson had been in Michael's class at school. "Robert, I need to see you tomorrow. Don't call the house. Meet me at Frank's Diner at 9 a.m. It's urgent. Tell no one." I hit send and closed the laptop. Through the window, I could see the barn, where Michael had learned to change oil in the truck, where I'd taught him how to measure twice and cut once when we'd built the new stalls. The fields stretched out beyond, corn growing tall in the June heat. $3.8 million. That's what 43 years of my life was worth to my son. Not the memories, not the legacy, just the cash value. I heard footsteps in the hallway. Jennifer's voice called out, "Dad, you need help getting ready for bed?" I grabbed my cane and stood, making sure to lean heavily on it. "I'm fine," I called back, letting my words slur just slightly. Just tired." "Okay, sleep well," she said, her voice sweet and concerned. Through the open door, I watched her walk back toward the bedroom. She was wearing Sarah's locket, the one I'd given my wife on our 25th anniversary. Jennifer had asked to borrow it last month, said she wanted to feel close to the grandmother she'd never met. I'd said yes, because I'd thought she meant it. I thought a lot of things about my son and his wife. I'd thought they were stressed about money because they'd bought too big a house. I'd thought Jennifer's new car was a gift from her parents. I'd thought Michael's talk about investment opportunities was just him trying to make conversation with his old man. I hadn't thought they were spending my money before they'd even stolen it. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my desk and watched the camera feeds. At 11:30, Michael came out of the bedroom and went down to the kitchen. I switched to that feed and watched him pour bourbon into a glass. 3 fingers worth. He stood at the window, looking out at the property. For a moment, just a moment, I wanted to believe he was having second thoughts. Maybe he was standing there, looking at the land he'd grown up on, remembering everything we'd built together. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. "Marcus, it's Michael." "Yeah, I know it's late. Listen, we're on schedule. Dad signs the papers tomorrow. We file for incompetency on Friday, and the property will be available within 60 days. You can start planning the development." I turned up the volume. "Strip mall on the east 40 acres. Residential on the west." "Yeah, the farmhouse comes down. Historic charm doesn't pay the bills, right?" He laughed, drained the bourbon, poured another glass. I saved the video and started a new file labeled Evidence, Day 87. The next morning, I dressed carefully. Button-up shirt, clean jeans. I even shaved, though my hand trembled and I nicked myself twice. At 8:30, I shuffled into the kitchen where Jennifer was making breakfast. "Morning, Dad," she said brightly. "I made your favorite. Scrambled eggs and toast." "Thank you," I said, sitting down slowly. You're good to me." She smiled and squeezed my shoulder. I wondered if she felt guilty at all, or if the 3.8 million made it easy to ignore. Michael came in at 8:40, dressed in a suit. "Big day, Dad. We've got an appointment at 10 with a financial advisor. Just going to help get your affairs in order. Make sure you're taken care of." "Okay," I said simply. Took a bite of eggs. They tasted like sawdust. "You remember we talked about this?" Michael prompted. "About making sure you have help managing everything?" "I remember," I lied. We'd never talked about it. But I knew what papers would be waiting at that 10 o'clock appointment. The ones that would declare me incompetent. The ones that would give Michael control of everything. "Great. We leave at 9:30. I nodded. Ate another bite of eggs. I need to run an errand first. Frank's diner. Promised Frank I'd stop by." Michael frowned. "Dad, we don't really have time." "I promised," I said, letting my voice crack slightly. Frank's my friend. Since before you were born." Jennifer touched Michael's arm. "We can spare 30 minutes. Let him see his friend. It's good for him to get out." Michael's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Fine, but we're not missing this appointment." At 9 a.m. exactly, I pulled my old Ford into Frank's diner parking lot. Michael had offered to drive me, but I'd insisted. Told him I needed to feel independent. The truth was, I needed him to not see who I was meeting. Robert was already in a back booth, coffee in front of him. He stood when I walked in, and I saw his eyes take in my cane, my careful steps. We'd last seen each other at Sarah's funeral. He'd aged too, but his eyes were still sharp behind his glasses. "James," he said quietly. "What's wrong?" I slid into the booth and pulled out my phone, opened the app, and showed him the feed from last night. Michael's phone call. The words "the farmhouse comes down" and "strip mall" clear as day. Robert watched in silence. His coffee grew cold. When the video ended, he looked at me and said, "How long has this been going on?" 3 months of recordings. But I think longer than that. I pulled out a folder from my jacket. Inside were bank statements I'd gotten copies of from my online accounts, transfers I hadn't authorized, credit cards I hadn't opened. Michael's been forging my signature for at least 6 months. Small amounts at first, testing if I'd notice. Jesus, James. They're taking me to sign incompetency papers at 10 this morning. Once I'm declared mentally unfit, he gets power of attorney. Then, I gestured at the folder. Then, all of this becomes legal. He'll sell the farm, put me in memory care, and tell everyone he's doing it for my own good. Robert was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his own phone and made a call. Detective Morrison? It's Robert Chen. I need you to meet me at Meadowbrook Financial Services at 9:50 a.m. Financial elder abuse case. Urgent. He paused. Yes, that's serious. Thank you. He hung up and looked at me. I need you to go to that appointment. Act like you don't know anything. The detective will be there, and so will I. When Michael presents those papers for you to sign, we'll intervene. What if, James? Robert's voice was gentle. You're not incompetent. You're not confused. You've been documenting evidence like a damn FBI agent for 3 months. We have him on camera committing fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and elder abuse. This ends today. I nodded. My hands weren't shaking anymore. At 9:50, I walked into Meadowbrook Financial Services with Michael's hand on my elbow, Jennifer walking behind us. The receptionist smiled and directed us to a conference room. A man in an expensive suit was already inside. Mr. Harrison, I'm David Kellerman. Thank you for coming in today. I nodded and let Michael guide me to a chair. Jennifer sat on my other side. Kellerman pulled out a stack of papers. Now, these are fairly standard documents. They'll help ensure that your assets are properly managed and that you receive the care you need as you age. Dad's been having some memory issues, Michael said smoothly. We just want to make sure he's protected. Of course, Kellerman said. He pushed the papers toward me. If you'll just sign here, and initial here, the door opened. Robert Chen walked in, followed by a woman in a police uniform. She had a badge clipped to her belt and eyes that had seen too much. I'm sorry, the receptionist said, hurrying in behind them. I told them you were in a meeting. It's fine, Robert said calmly. He looked at Michael. Hello, Michael. Been a long time. Michael's face went white. Mr. Chen? What are you doing here? Representing my client. Robert gestured to me. James Harrison. Your father. Jennifer stood up. I don't understand. Detective Morrison, Riverside PD, the woman said. She pulled out her badge. Mr. Harrison, are you here of your own free will? I looked at my son. Looked at the man who I'd taught to ride a bike, who I'd sent to college, who I'd welcomed home every Thanksgiving with open arms, the man who was going to erase everything his mother and I had built. No, I said clearly. No slur. No hesitation. I'm here under false pretenses. My son told me this was a routine financial checkup. He didn't tell me these papers would declare me mentally incompetent and give him power of attorney. Dad, Michael started. I have evidence, I continued, pulling out my phone. 3 months of audio and video recordings, documenting fraud, financial abuse, and conspiracy to commit both. I pulled up the video from last night, set my phone on the conference table, and hit play. Michael's voice filled the room. Yeah, I know it's late. Listen, we're on schedule. Dad signs the papers tomorrow. We file for incompetency on Friday, and the property will be available within 60 days. Jennifer made a small sound. Kellerman pushed back from the table. The video continued. Strip mall on the east 40 acres, residential on the west. Yeah, the farmhouse comes down. Historic charm doesn't pay the bills, right? Detective Morrison looked at Michael. Sir, I need you to step outside with me. This is a misunderstanding, Michael said. His voice was rising. My father is sick. He's confused. He doesn't know what he's saying. Mr. Harrison, Robert said, looking at me. Can you tell Detective Morrison today's date? June 14th, 2024, I said. Thursday. I've been documenting my son's activities since March 22nd. I have recordings stored in cloud-based servers, copies with my attorney as of yesterday, and a full medical evaluation from Dr. Patricia Reeves dated June 10th showing normal cognitive function. Michael stared at me, really looked at me, maybe for the first time in months, and I saw the moment he realized the truth. His father wasn't a confused old man. His father had been 5 steps ahead of him the entire time. You. Michael's voice cracked. You knew? I heard you, I said quietly. That first night, I heard you tell Jennifer that Mom's death was the best thing that could have happened because it meant I'd be alone and easy to manipulate. I stood up, without using my cane. My leg still hurt, but I didn't need the prop anymore. I loved you enough to hope I was wrong. So I waited, and I documented, and you proved me right every single day. Detective Morrison pulled out handcuffs. Michael Harrison, you're under arrest for attempted financial exploitation of an elderly person, fraud, and conspiracy to commit fraud. You have the right to remain silent. Jennifer was crying. We didn't mean. We weren't going to hurt him. You were going to put me in a facility and sell my home, I said. Not angry, just tired. The home where your grandmother died, where your husband grew up. You were going to bulldoze it for a strip mall. She had nothing to say to that. They led Michael out in handcuffs. Jennifer followed, not arrested but not free either. Robert had told me she'd likely face charges too, depending on what she'd known and when. Kellerman, the financial advisor, was stammering something about not knowing, about being deceived himself. Detective Morrison took his statement. I stood in the conference room and felt every one of my 67 years. Robert touched my shoulder. You did the right thing, did I? I looked at him. He's still my son. He made his choices, James. You just made sure he faced the consequences. I drove home alone. The farmhouse was quiet when I walked in. I went to my office and pulled up the camera feeds one last time. Watched myself walk through the empty rooms. Just a man and his cane. And 43 years of memories. My phone rang. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Dad? Michael's voice. Calling from the police station. Probably. I'm listening, I said. I'm sorry. He was crying. I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened to me. The money. The pressure. Jennifer's parents judging us. The guys at work with their vacation homes and their boats. And I wanted. You wanted what was mine, I finished. Without earning it. Without waiting for it. Without even having the decency to let me die with my dignity intact. Silence on the line. Then, what happens now? Now you face trial. You probably go to prison. The farm stays mine until I decide what to do with it. I paused. And you live with the fact that you tried to destroy your father for a strip mall. I love you, he said. I know I have no right to say that, but I do. I love you too, I said quietly. That's what makes this hurt. I hung up. That evening, I stood on the back porch with a beer in my hand and watched the sun set over the cornfields. The stalks were high and green, ready for a good harvest. In the barn, the tractor sat waiting for fall work. The fence along the south property line needed mending. Everything needed someone to care for it. I thought about Sarah, about the life we'd built here, about the son we'd raised and the dreams we'd had for him, about legacy and what it meant when the person you built it for tried to tear it down. My phone buzzed. A text from Robert. The DA is moving forward with charges. Trial probably in 6 months. You need anything. Call me. I didn't respond. Just stood there as the sky turned orange and then purple and then dark. 3 weeks later, I sold the east 40 acres. Not to Marcus and his strip mall, to the county land trust, with a conservation easement that would keep it as farmland forever. The money went into a trust for my 2 grandchildren, Michael's kids, to be distributed when they turned 30. The rest of the farm, the 200 acres with the house and the barn, I put in a different trust. When I died, it would go to a program for young farmers who couldn't afford land of their own. They'd work it, live in the house, and keep Sarah's gardens growing. Michael's lawyer called it vindictive, called it punishment. I called it making sure the land mattered to someone. The trial was brutal. Michael took a plea deal. 8 years for fraud and elder abuse. Jennifer got probation and community service. She left town before the sentencing was even done. I didn't go to any of it. Sent Robert instead. Couldn't bear to watch my son stand before a judge and beg for mercy. The grandkids wrote me letters. Their mother's parents had taken them in. They didn't understand why Grandpa had sent Daddy to prison. I didn't write back. How do you explain to a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old that their father tried to steal their grandfather's life? Maybe someday I'd try. Maybe when they were older. When they asked questions about the farm and the trust funds and why Grandpa lived alone. Or maybe I'd just let them have their memories of birthday parties and Christmas mornings before everything fell apart. It's been a year now. I still use the cane sometimes, when my leg hurts. But I don't pretend anymore. Don't slur my words or forget what day it is. The house is quiet. Too quiet. I eat dinner alone. Watch TV alone. Work the gardens alone. Last week, Frank from the diner stopped by with his granddaughter. She's starting agriculture school in the fall. Wants to learn about sustainable farming. We walked the fields together, and I showed her the irrigation system, the crop rotation plans, the way the soil feels when it's ready. She asked if she could come back, bring her friends from the ag program, learn from someone who'd been working the land for 40 years. I said yes. It's not the legacy I planned. Not the one I dreamed about when Michael was born, and I'd imagined teaching him everything I knew, watching him take over someday, continuing what Sarah and I started. But it's a legacy. People will work this land, learn from it, love it, and maybe that's enough. I still have the recordings. All of them. Saved in multiple places. Backed up on drives. Copies with Robert. Evidence of the worst months of my life. Sometimes I wonder if I should delete them. Move on. Forgive. But then I remember my son's voice on that phone call. The farmhouse comes down. Historic charm doesn't pay the bills. And I save the files again. Because forgiveness is complicated when the person you need to forgive is your own child. When the trust that's broken isn't just about money, but about who you thought they were, who you raised them to be. Michael writes me letters from prison. I don't open them. Maybe I will someday. Maybe I won't. For now, I sit on the back porch in the evenings, drinking my beer, watching the corn grow. The farm is still here, still standing, still mine. And that's the revenge I chose. Not destruction, not matching cruelty with cruelty, just making sure that what they tried to take from me outlasts us all. Silent, hushed, complete.